Okay, so final session of the day that I think we've entitled Maximising Global Opportunities. I think I might like to call this something else, actually. You know, as we're getting into World Cup scenarios, maybe a head-to-head, Spain versus Peru. How about that one, about global trade? So delighted to see how many papers Jose can score in his first presentation. So let me introduce Jose Antonio Garcia to argue the Spanish position. Good to see you. All right, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, the Fresh Produce Consortium, for the invitation to be here today. Many of the things I was planning to say have already been put on the table by the speakers, so I think I will be as quick as possible. The idea is to give our vision on fruit and vegetable business from Spain. We are just willing to keep on trading from Spain to UK, regardless of how Brexit is going to finish. We even keep in mind the possibility of probably going back to the normal scenario. We will talk about that later. Our objective is to keep the trade of fruit and vegetable from Spain to UK, or try to increase the trade. So just to introduce a few words about myself, about Alimpo, the association I am working for. Alimpo is the interbranch association in Spain. We are focused mainly on lemon and grapefruit, and we represent, let's say, the first part of the supply chain. We are representing the producers, the growers, we are representing the cooperatives and exporters doing business in the fresh market, and we are also representing the processing plants. Because 25 or 30% of the lemon and grapefruit production is going to processing, it's not going to a fresh market. So having all these members inside of the association allows us to have a global view of the supply chain. I've been working for Alimpo for nearly 20 years, and I am also a colleague from Nigel in Fresh Fair Europe. We are both are members of the board of Fresh Fair Europe, the European Association for Fresh Fruit and Vegetables. And in Alimpo, we are also very committed with sustainability, with quality issues, plant health, emeralds, and all the things that have been put on the table today, this afternoon by the speakers. And we try to be active, making lobby, not only with the national authorities, but also with the European authorities, and we are quite active at the Commission, the European Commission level, and with the Parliament, with the European Parliament. Although working with nearly 700 MEPs, it's sometimes quite difficult. It used to be more easy to have good contact with the Commission in the past, but after the Lisbon Treaty, things are becoming more and more difficult. Well, going to the main figures to be highlighted, Nigel just put on the screen some figures at the beginning of the session. But it is important to remember that UK, as a global importer, is importing nearly 6 million tons of fruit and vegetables, with an important value in terms of euros. At least around 70% of the volumes are fruits, the rest are vegetables. And talking about the origin, 55% of this total volume comes from the European producing countries, and 45% from third countries. And if we compare this data with the local production figures, I hope they're right, Nigel, we can conclude very easily that UK is very dependent on importing fruit and vegetables. So I think it was a good remark when I think Nigel told during one of the sessions that one of the commitments from the politicians or from the UK government is that they have to feed the British population. So this is one of the important topics when we are talking about Brexit or the possibility to become a third country. So globally, if we see the chart, globally we are talking about 6 million tons that are being imported into the UK. 3.2 million tons are coming from the European Union, and Spain is one of the relevant countries making business in the fresh produce trade with the UK. We are talking about 1.4 million tons as a whole. We are talking about tomatoes, easy peelers, oranges, cucumbers, celery, onions, lemons, etc., peaches, nectarines, etc., etc. So these are the main figures, and I think they are important because we are talking about Brexit and we are talking about the future. Spain has a very relevant position, and we have the responsibility to analyze the situation, to push our politicians in Spain and also in the Commission in order to get a good agreement, because we are quite dependent on the British, the UK market. The second country is Netherlands. I don't know if there is any people from the Netherlands in the auditorium, but we will talk about that later. We had the feeling that we may have a kind of dispute or a kind of a strategy probably from the Netherlands to become maybe a hub in the future for the trade of fruit and vegetables produced in Europe and coming to the UK. And as a proof of that is that the Dutch government has recently announced that they are going to have 700 new inspectors to be prepared for the official controls, the pesticide controls, the plant health controls that will probably have to take in place in the future after Brexit. So there is a negotiation being taken in place at EU level, but after that, behind the curtains, we have the strategies of each individual member states. And in the case of fruit and vegetables, Spain has an important position and has something to say, but when we are talking about Brexit, we are not talking only about fresh produce, we are talking about everything. So, going back to future, what can be done? I think the most important thing is to get ready. There is one important word that is being repeated every single day in Brussels, which is preparedness. So we had to get prepared to the new situation. We had to make a good analysis how Brexit may affect the sector. We had to make proposals. We had to make lobby. We had to identify the risks, the opportunities. I hope the opportunities are not on the way to get rules less stricter in the future. I hope that. And we had to try to motivate both the sector, the private sector, but we have also the commitment to motivate the public administration, the authorities. I had this morning a meeting with the people from the Spanish embassy in the UK to talk about these kind of things, and they have no answers to the questions. But probably now it is the right time to prepare the list of questions. Nobody is going to know now the answers, but as much as we can analyze the situation, we can forecast the future, and we can prepare. We have been doing things so far. We have, during the last year or maybe during the last semester, we have worked a lot and we have spent a lot of money talking about future and Brexit and how the UK market is going to be in the future for us. We had in January a meeting in Madrid with Mr. Barnier, the European negotiator. We were not just talking about fresh produce with Mr. Barnier. He's much more in a very high political position, but I think the meeting was good to at least to put on the table that we are quite worried about fresh produce. In the meeting, we were at least 20 different sectors represented: airlines, the alliance between British Airways and Iberia. They have identified a lot of problems as well. The energy sector has also problems, the financial sector. But I think it was a good opportunity to say in a direct way to Mr. Barnier that the fresh produce sector is worried about the future. We had in April a meeting with our Ministry of Agriculture in Madrid, in Spain, just to put on the table the data and the main questions. Our colleagues from Fresh Food Europe had also a meeting with DEFRA in the month of April. And I had also some meetings in Brussels with DG Santé, DG Agri, DG Taxud, to talk about that. And the feeling we have in general is that nobody knows what is going to happen, and we are waiting for a political decision. And once the political decision is taken, I think it will be the time to work on the details, sector by sector. The reaction when we put on the table the data and the questions, the reaction we have from not the politicians, from the people in the technical side on the public administration, is that they are quite surprised. They get quite worried about the situation, but I insist they have really no answers. The negotiation is at a very high level, but we have to go forward. And I think this meeting today is really a good opportunity to share the feeling, how we see the process from Spain or from other member states producing fresh produce, and which is the feeling you have here in UK. And because at the end, the business is made by two parts. In my case, by the Spanish people selling goods to UK, and the business is also made by you, the importers. So I think we had to go together, and we had to identify the critical points and have a common message if we want to go forward. This is what we are doing in Fresh Food Europe. We have a position paper already written. It's a document of 19 pages. Fresh Produce Consortium has contributed a lot to the document. And this is the document we are passing to all the people we are meeting, not only in the Commission, also in the member states. And I think it's important to distribute also. I think you have already done to distribute this paper to DEFRA, to other people here in the UK. This is the document we have made to identify the bottlenecks for the fresh produce sector. We have identified 4 scenarios. For sure, probably there are many more scenarios than 4, but we have simplified. We have the scenario number 1, which is the ideal one. Nothing is going to happen after Brexit. Things are going to be the same. Scenario number 2 with a transition period, but with no regulatory convergence guaranteed. And the scenario number 3 with a partial cliff edge situation, and the scenario 4 with a full cliff edge. And we have identified a number of topics at different levels, in the level of the production, the trade, the sourcing, the packaging, the administration for export, logistics and customs, and many of the topics have already been highlighted by the previous speaker. So I will just concentrate on some of them. First of all, I think after giving you some brief details on the main hot topics, I think that there's one important topic, and we have not been talking about today, is how Brexit is going to influence on the economical evolution of UK in the future. Because if the economy is going to be bad in the future, that means that the consumer will have less money, the confidence of the consumers will be lower, and probably it is going to affect the consumer habits. And on the other part, we see that most probably the cost of supplying is going to be higher, not only because of the evolution of the pound and euro rate, but also because of the official controls cost money, because logistics are going to be more difficult. So the scenario the worst scenario in the future may be that the consumer will change the consumer habits, and at the same time, also the consumer will increase the demand for cheaper products. Probably there is a possibility that the quality requirements for the consumer will be affected. And on the other hand, supply of fresh produce will be more expensive in the future. So how to get a good balance will be quite difficult. I think it's a good discussion to have on that topic. Well, very quickly, we have one of the topics we have identified is that small and medium companies in Spain exporting fresh produce are not used to export to a third country. We are exporting much more than 80% of our exports are exported to the EU market, so we are in the internal market. So exporting or selling our products to a third country is something completely new to our small and medium companies, and this is quite complex. The second one, the regulatory insecurity. We are talking about pesticides, plant health, what is going to happen after Brexit. Probably the first day the regulation is going to be the same, but the legislative machine of Brussels is a non-stopping machine. They are modifying, making amendments of the regulation on a daily basis. So one of the questions is the UK administration able to follow the speed of the amendments at EU level? Because if not, we are going probably in a few months we will have to face to a situation where the European MRLs are different from the UK MRLs, and that's really a difficult issue to handle. And the same applies to plant health. Is DEFRA willing to sign an agreement to accept all the technical reports from the European Food and Safety Agency, from EFSA? Or is the DEFRA able to design and to create a UK EFSA, for example? Or how the DEFRA is going to develop the pest risk assessments? Do you have the budget? Do you have the people in charge of doing that? So these are part of the big questions. Another important point is about organic production, or PGIs and PDOs. Probably someone may think about creating a local organic regulation. So how are we going to export organic fresh produce produced in Spain to the UK? Is DEFRA thinking about making a convalidation system in the future to accept organic produce produced according to the European legislation? That is another question. Labeling and marketing standards, the same. How is it going to be considered in the future? That certificates of origin. If we are exporting to a third country, we need to export to have a document stating that the origin of the produce is Spanish or Italian or French or whatever. Now we are using these certificates of origin to export to Brazil, to China, to Indonesia, to a third country in general, and we have to pay 60 euros per certificate. So I don't want to think about making or paying for certificates of origin for 1.4 million tons of fruit and vegetables coming from Spain to Europe. That's a big cost, and that has also to be considered. And the same applies for phytosanitary certificates. If we had to do that, that means extra cost. And there is another problem. We are not only talking about 1.4 million tons exported from Spain to UK. The problem is that the problem is multiplied by 5 or by 6 if we are taking into account that we are exporting in mixed containers. We are not exporting a single lorry of lemons. We are exporting a lorry with maybe different pallets of lemon, grapefruit, cucumber, lettuce, and each single pallet should have a certificate of origin. That means 60 euros per pallet as an extra cost for us and as an exporter. So we will see what happens about that. Official controls. Initially, official controls have to be put in place, and I suppose that the UK administration is going to receive some money for making the official controls. So the fees will have to be paid. Transit procedures. The same, someone talked about that, about flowers coming to Rotterdam and from Rotterdam to UK. The same apply, for example, with citrus of lemons coming from Argentina or from South Africa to UK and re-exported to the EU. We will have to talk about that. The capacities and facilities, we need a space, we need people, we are talking about a huge quantity of tons to be controlled, logistics, cool chambers, etc., not only in UK, but also in Spain or in Rotterdam or in France. We had to be prepared about that. And preparing a port is not just a question of 24 hours. We need a huge amount of money to be invested, and we need space, and we need to planify these investments. Then we have tariffs and quotas. We were talking about a scenario going to the WTO. The average rate for fruit and vegetables could be 10.8%. I have some examples here. Onions would apply for 9.6% as a tariff, capsicum 7.2%, cucumber 12.8%, mandarins, oisi peelers 16%, pears 7.2%, and grapes 17.6%. That means, again, extra cost. And I insist on the idea we had to check if we can make a balance between the extra cost of importing and the price the consumer is willing to pay in the future. We have the problem with the VAT, and of course we have the problem with the exchange rate that I put in black because we have no possibility to influence of that. I don't know if we have any chance to influence on the other topics, but at least I think the most important thing is to identify the problems and try to speak to the people in charge of these issues. And finally, I'm not going to talk about this slide, which is quite famous. In theory, we don't see the scenario of going to the WTO. That would be the case of the relationship between the European Union and Mauritania. And I don't feel UK can take the place of Mauritania in any case. That makes really no sense. That's not logical. And we are quite not worried. We are quite expectant to the visit of Mr. Trump in July to UK. I think my personal feeling is that now Europe and UK are playing like playing chess, and they are making their strategy. In the last months, the European Union has tried to show the power they have to sign trade agreements with Korea, with Mexico, with Japan. They tried to relaunch the negotiations with Mercosur. I think that the idea was to put in the scenario the idea that the European Union has the power to reach trade agreements. And so if UK is leaving the European Union, UK will not be part of this power of trade negotiating. And we don't know what Trump is taking to UK. We think that maybe one possibility could be to announce starting negotiations between USA and UK. You remember that the TTIP negotiations failed in the past, so probably it could be an opportunity to put UK in the scenario with, let's say, an announcement, not really much more than that. So this is what I wanted to tell you, that we are committed to be part of the business between Spain and UK, that we have to work together. We are doing a good job in Freshfell, not only me as Limpo, the lemon and grapefruit sector, but all the supply chain of fresh produce in Spain. And I think we have made the analysis. We had the questions, we have not the answers. But once the political decision is taken, I am positive, and I think we will start receiving some answers to our questions. Thank you very much.